Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am super excited for today's video. It is going to be my first update in the No Pan Left Behind series that I started at the beginning of this year. I do have one palette that I will be rolling out today, which I'm super excited about. And if you guys missed my introduction, I will leave that linked below. Essentially, I am focused on 4 eyeshadow palettes at a time and just trying to use every single eyeshadow shade within that palette at least one time before rolling it out. I do select the 4 palettes that I'm working on at random. I have all of my palettes within my palette collection in my Tiny Decisions app, and that's how I selected the 4 palettes that we started with, and that is how I will select the new palette that will replace the one that we are rolling out. I am pre-filming a little bit, so I likely could have ended up with 2 rollouts, but I am going on a work trip and you'll likely be seeing this video when I'm on that work trip, but I'm trying to pre-film so I can still post videos like 3 times per week. And I figured since I had one palette to roll out, I could update this and then it would be a good time to do that. Hopefully next update I will have 2 palettes to roll out. But if you guys are interested in seeing my update in the No Pan Left Behind series, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel and you like project panning content or just chit-chatting about makeup, I would love if you'd consider subscribing before moving on. And other than that, let's jump into the video. Alright you guys, I am super excited for this update. I am already feeling just so inspired by this project, and I feel like it's gonna just be so helpful to actually like work my way through my palette collection. So I'm feeling a little bit silly because I didn't take pictures of these palettes when I started my introduction, but I will have pictures of these palettes going forward. And some of the palettes I may use one of the shades only one time, but I think it'll just be fun to look at the progress. The palette that I'll be rolling out today, I wish I had taken a picture of when I rolled it in, just because I have made some decent progress on like at least one of the shades, but it is what it is. There are 2 palettes that I didn't reach for at all. Again, I am pre-filming this a little bit, so I've only had this project going on for like 3 weeks because I am pre-filming. So hopefully in the future I won't have any palettes that I like haven't used at all. So we can just start with the 2 that I have not yet reached for at all. The first being the Melt Mary Jane. I am also working on a Pan That palette, and I'm working on the Sultry palette, the ABH Sultry palette. And this Melt Mary Jane palette is cool toned, similar to the Sultry palette, and I really wanted to start out that project strong, start January out strong by using that palette truly as much as I could. And also the Melt Mary Jane palette is just a more difficult formula to work with. It's not something I would want to wear to work, just because I feel like, one, it takes me a little bit longer to actually build a look with this palette because I have to spend more time blending and just getting the shades to like adhere to my eyes, and typically I'll have fallout with this palette anyway. So I haven't reached for this palette yet at all because I haven't filmed with this palette either. So this is still going to be in, obviously. And the other one is the Sugar Pill Fun Size palette, which is such a cute little 9-pan matte kind of like pastel-y rainbow palette. I am really excited to reach for this palette. I just really was focused on my Odenseye Hela palette, which is the palette I'll be rolling out, and my ABH Sultry palette, as well as trying to just get use out of some of my other palettes. I have some new palettes that I'm still trying to test out for review as well, so I just haven't gotten around to this. I'm hoping that I maybe could roll this one out like with a little bit of effort. Maybe every time that I film the next couple of weeks, I try and build a look with this palette so that this can be a rollout for next month. It's obviously not an everyday palette for me, and will likely take me 2 or 3 uses to get use out of every single shade in this palette, but I did not reach for this one at all since the introduction. The Huda Beauty Rose Quartz palette I have reached for twice. I do have one look, and I will post a picture of looks as well that I've created with this palette. I have one look that I created using solely this palette, so I'll post that picture off to the side. And then I used a couple of the shades just like in a different look, but didn't actually build a look with this palette. And I'll likely only share looks if I've used the majority of the shades within the palette to create a look. And my goal with this project is to also try and like create full looks with the palette in this project rather than just like reaching for a shade here or there. That is one thing I have not been great at within my palette collection, is actually just like trying to build a look out of just one palette. And that's also what I want to use this project for. I created a very simple work appropriate look with this palette. And I'm excited to kind of play around with this palette a little bit more and create some more like fun, intricate looks. But I will post a picture over here with the palette and how it looks today. And I'll post the numbers of the times that I used each of the shades within the palette off to the side rather than going through one by one, just because I feel like that might be easier. There are 2 shades within this palette that I've already reached for 2 times. So each time that I reached for this palette, I reached for 2 of the shades both times, which I'm really excited about. I love the larger Huda Beauty palettes, and I'm really excited to continue to get use out of this palette. I think February is the perfect time to have this palette pulled out. I just feel like there's a lot of romantic tones within this palette, and I think I can have a lot of fun with this. Maybe this will be a rollout. There's a lot of shades within this palette, but I am hopeful that maybe this will also be a rollout for the next update, because I don't feel like this is a great palette for March. Like it's not giving me the leprechaun vibes for March, you know? My look today is, but... All right, and that brings me to the Odenseye Hela palette, which is my rollout for today. I reached for this palette a total of 6 times. I have 2 looks that I want to share with you, and I followed looks that Angie created in her video, her like reveal video. I recreated 2 of the looks that she shared within that video, so I'll have her video linked down below in case you're interested. One of the looks I used a lot of the pink shades at the bottom, and then the look today is my second like look using most of the shades up at the top here. And again, I reached for this palette 6 total times. The shade that I reached for the most is this one right here, and I definitely want to set a goal to hit pan on this shade at some point this year. I'm going to put this palette away for a little bit, but I do think that I can hit pan in the shade double-sided probably around the summertime. I was reaching for this as an inner corner highlight so frequently this past summer, and I want to do the same this summer and hopefully hit pan on that. I am hopeful. I haven't set like an eyeshadow pan goal this year, but I would think like at least 10 would feel really good. I also really enjoyed this pastel yellow matte shade in the inner corner. I used it twice as an inner corner shade, and I loved it. So maybe I could also, it would be fun to hit pan in a couple of shades within this palette. I just enjoyed my time so much reaching for this. This was my favorite palette of last year. I love this palette so much, but I hadn't reached for like the pinks that much, so it was fun to create a look with the pinks. And I am excited that I have officially used every single shade within this palette and do get to roll it out. Again, I will have a picture over here that shows the palette and how many times I used each of the shades. I did reach for most of the shades within this palette just 1 time, but double-sided I reached for 5 times. The pastel yellow in the shade Rebirth I reached for 2 times, and then I also reached for the forest green matte 2 times as well. But I will be rolling this out because I did reach my goal in using each shade at least 1 time, meaning that I will be pulling out my Tiny Decisions app, which I have officially updated with my most recent palette list. If you guys caught my introduction, it was kind of a disaster. I thought I had my most recent palette collection in my Tiny Decisions wheel, and alas, I did not. And my first like 3 rolls were all palettes that I had either decluttered or I rolled in my pan that palette. I don't know how the stats worked in or against my favorite. It was kind of wild, but I have updated my Tiny Decisions app, and we are gonna roll for a new palette to focus on. So here we go. I'm a little bit nervous. We get the Pat McGrath Utopian palette. Ooh, this is a palette that I purchased last year, and I feel like with Pat McGrath palettes personally, I struggle to reach for them on like a day-to-day basis. I feel like I reserve them for like special occasions because they're super expensive palettes, but that should not be my mindset with Pat McGrath palettes because they cost so much money. I should be getting so much use out of them. So I'm really excited about this. I'm gonna go grab my Utopian palette and I will be right back to share it with you. All right, you guys, I'm actually super excited that this was the one that was rolled in. So this is the Pat McGrath Utopian palette. I also feel like this is just such a great time of year to have this palette pulled for Valentine's Day. Pat McGrath typically tends to lean on the rosy side in general, but I'm so excited about this. I feel like this gives me like a great excuse to reach for this palette that I otherwise wouldn't have, and maybe I'll like super fall in love with this palette, and even after using every single shade I'll want to keep it pulled and get so much use out of it because I spent so much money on this. I actually ended up using like a Sephora reward, so I didn't actually spend so much money on this, but these cost so much money. I need to be using my Pat McGrath Mothership palettes and getting like use and love out of them. So this is what this palette looks like. I have used it some, but not a ton, and I'm so excited about this. I think perhaps this could for sure, you guys, maybe all of these could be rollouts, especially because I am pre-filming, so by the time I update this again, it'll be like 5-ish weeks that I've gotten to get use out of these palettes. And like, I feel like maybe, what if I rolled out all 4 palettes? My goal is to roll out 3 minimum. 3 minimum. I got this. I got this. Yeah, I can definitely do it. But that is gonna wrap it up for today's update. I hope that you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you are doing something similar, if you're trying to pan eyeshadow, what your goals are in terms of eyeshadow usage this year. I'd love to chat about it in the comments below, but that's gonna wrap it up for today's video. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to watch, for supporting my channel, for supporting me. I love you guys so much, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye.